Just right back, Charlie.
Because you always use that active and that defending. I think it's like. Because you always use that active and that defending. I think it's like.
People deluded, I'm back again.
Come on, Ian. Man. Come on.
As the big man Ian Wright just said there, people deluded, I'm back again. It's DG Feet, the different knock. It's the first one of 2024. How you doing, my guy? Happy New Year's and all of those things.
Happy New Year, sir. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm sure we're going to get into it, but the only problem in my life is probably Arsenal's December period. But other than that, I'm cushy, man. What about yourself?
I'm good. I was watching the darts last night, and I'm still annoyed.
That 16-year-old lost, isn't it?
Win. Mate, I've never watched darts before, and now I'm now a darts channel. So, we'll be speaking exclusively about darts, about 9-point finishes, whatever it is. I've no idea. But I love it.
You're a madman. But yeah, let's get into it, man. I'm probably going to wipe the smile off your face, but when we saw City have a blip, Spurs have a blip, Chelsea have a blip, and since August up until this point, we've been chugging along. We can't be naive to assume that throughout a 38-game season, we weren't going to hit a bit of a roadblock. And it's not, I wouldn't say we need to be unnecessarily negative or unnecessarily positive, but Arsenal fans, depending on which side of the ladder you fall on, it's all doom and gloom, pack up. So what have you made of the December period, man?
Where are the signings? Where are the signings? Yeah, look,
transfer new settings, man.
yeah. Babs needs his thumbnails, guys. Look, I think you sort of said it there. It's my thing at the moment, and I've got something coming out about this today as well. Like my thing at the moment is figuring out what is wrong and what isn't wrong. I think sometimes it's like you have a terrible day. When you have like a really bad day and you're like, and I hate where I live and I hate my family and I hate my friend. And you
need to get 8 hours sleep. I need to wake up early. I need to go gym every day. Yeah.
Everything is terrible. And then you wake up and you have a coffee and you calm down and then you start to go, okay, well, there's only 2 or 3 problems. I just need to sort those out and everything will feel better. I think we're in that sort of stage. And you're right. There's going to come a time in a season where you have a dip. Now, last season, there was I think another part of this is there was a very obvious reason. We had a guy who now can't get minutes for Crystal Palace and expecting, and playing in our team and who should remain nameless. And we were expecting, we were expecting
Cannavaro and that.
Exactly. We're expecting to get the same results. So there was a very obvious reason. I think year before, Partey and Tierney out for the run in. So again, there was a more obvious thing. Now, this season, that feels like it isn't allowed to be an excuse with the injuries, which is to some degree I agree with because every team deals with injuries. And secondly, there isn't an obvious thing because a lot of our first teamers, are around. I think when you really look into it, there are some reasons, but which we'll come to probably. But more broadly, the last thing I'm going to say is Arteta and the team, whatever you think, however deep you think this hole is, have earned the right to show us that they can fix this. I don't understand how a team who were top on Christmas Day, who were in the title.
I don't look at the league table. That's news to me. But go on.
Who were top on Christmas Day? I'll tell you that for free. Who are, I think, still only 2 points off the top. If that's out of the title race and whatever, things change so quickly. So I think January might feel hard because we've only got 2 games and it might not change much. But I think if we're sat here in a couple of months' time, I think we'll be feeling a little bit better about it.
I think you said it there is that, it could be better, it could be worse. I would say the one issue for Arsenal, I feel beyond the obvious, I feel we make things harder than ourselves. I think we have this element of unfortunately shooting ourselves in the foot. You look at a couple of games we've obviously, and I know it happens, you can't win them all and whatnot, but I just feel, when we've gone in front in games and not saw it out to the end, I do think a couple of games in December, it's like we've started blisteringly good and then we've kind of sat off. I do think fundamentally losses are losses, draws are draws, and wins are wins. It doesn't matter if you played better in one loss than the other, you still haven't taken points. But I would say Fulham is the only game that kind of, for me, takes me back to the League Cup against West Ham, where there is no positives. We were second best all over the park. But then you look at Aston Villa, you look at West Ham, we were actually all right. We just didn't put the ball into the back of the net, which, again, I'm not cutting excuses, because ultimately you need to do that, really. I do think Mikel Arteta, to a degree, has arrested what we kind of had issues with kind of around September, October, in that we looked decent defensively. We looked good in the middle third. But despite all the goals we had, we're just not putting the ball in the back of the net. I think we're creating chances, but again, we're still not putting the ball in the back of the net. And I feel December has kind of been, you know, Arteta always says you need to be efficient in both boxes. I personally think our standards defensively has dropped, and that goes for the whole team. And obviously, we're not being efficient and effective in the final third. And I do think there's evident frailties in the team. We don't have a proven goal scorer for all the goals that we've got. I don't think we've necessarily learned our lesson from, you know, injuries and depth and the knock-on effect, although you could point towards Declan Rice and Partey. And I just feel our team needs to realize about fine margins. But you mentioned it there in the sense of, at the end of the day, the team has kind of earned the right to get themselves out of this hole. It could be better, it could be worse. One thing I'm a bit annoyed about is when you look on paper, not that I look at the league, but everybody, for all the sentiment, everybody's still in and around each other. And the only issue with Arsenal is that we haven't kind of pulled away. I guess, you know, if people are saying, you know, our season's done and we can't win the league and stuff, then the pressure in theory should be off us. And you mentioned it, they've earned the right to get over it. You mentioned something there along the lines of, you know, arresting problems or finding out the issues. What would you say has been the issues this season? Well, I say this season, this month.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, you mentioned it earlier as well about the finishing. And look, I understand those people who are really kind of, you know, I don't care about the underlying numbers, you know, but
Standards FC, man.
yeah, and you know, it's just, and it's a results-based business. And if you're losing, you know, if you're Wayne Rooney and you're losing how many games he lost, and love the Arsenal mug, by the way, and you're pointing to, you know, yeah, but we won on XG, like, yeah, it doesn't matter. You're right, but broadly, I think if you look at Arsenal, the trends over the last couple of seasons and the underlying numbers have been good. They've always been pointing upwards, which is why generally, as results flit around, you know, you've seen a general upwards trend. If Liverpool have, you know, if you go into a game and you're Liverpool and you get 7 XG or whatever it was against Newcastle, and they don't score, let's say, you can't say underlying numbers don't matter. No, that paints a picture of a story. So we have to look at our season, and generally our underlying numbers are still pretty good. I think we're still on a positive XG difference or whatever. And I think one of there's a whole picture, of course, of what's gone wrong. But one of the things is the finishing. The finishing hasn't been good enough, and that's simple as that. And I'm hoping it will improve. The only game, and you said it there, was Fulham. Fulham, we weren't good enough. We didn't.
Fulham's the only one. There's no positives, none. Weren't competitive, lost our duels, and I think Mikel Arteta was very. I'm not going to say Mikel Arteta isn't honest, because he is, but every couple of games this season, he's brutally honest and he says what we're saying. And I think he said that with Fulham. So if he feels like that, the players have to feel like that as well, man. But I cut you off. Go on.
No, that's the only game I've not felt pretty calm about, because West Ham, I was like, look, you don't have games where you create nearly 3 XG and just don't score very often. It doesn't happen. It might happen once or twice over the course of the season. It doesn't happen very often. If we keep playing like that, we will put ourselves in position. Again, if Jesus' head is here as opposed to there or whatever, like we're having a completely different conversation.
Right, so margins.
You can't do that. But what you can do is say, right, how do we get ourselves into positions where we can make sure the fine margins go for us? It's about creating more chances. It's about, you know, preparing well. It's about winning our duels, all those sorts of things, so that when we get into the box and the ball falls and there's a ricochet, there's enough times that happens where one of them, it goes for us. So that's what we can focus on. And we did that against West Ham. We didn't do that against Fulham. So Fulham's the only, really, this season, unless I'm forgetting one, I probably am.
Probably just the League Cup, the League Cup against West Ham. Them 2 games where we were proper people, like terrible. All the others, ultimately, if we've lost, but you mentioned it, you know, Villa, we were better than, obviously, I'd rather trade places with Aston Villa and get 3 points, but we were better than them. We didn't get the result. Newcastle, we didn't create. Obviously, you've mentioned West Ham as well. I think we was all right at Anfield. I think we kind of, when we scored, we kind of like, it's like, not that we retreated, but it's kind of, it reminded me a bit of what we did at Anfield last season and West Ham last season, and that we've clearly prepared for something all week. We've started blisteringly well. And I don't want to accuse the players of necessarily just becoming complacent, but it's like, we've done it now, kind of let's relax. And that's what I mean about, I'm at that stage now where if Arsenal want to get to where they need to, then the players have got to be a bit more street smart. They've got to understand the fine margins. And I think they do, because I go back a few weeks ago, I can't remember who, but we battered someone and Jorginho was like, we've got to be ruthless. And I think he's right, because you look at games against Wolves, games against Brighton, we won, I'm happy, but they were closer than they needed to be. And I just feel like, yeah, that's it. Just the fine margins. And we have this element of making things more difficult. We've both indirectly said it. If we're now in January and there's only been 2 games, one in the league where there is no positives, fair enough. Like, we've been the better team 9 times out of 10. So it does echo what you're saying about obviously underlining matters being good and whatnot. I just feel though, when I move away from that, like when I look at the trajectory since when Mikel Arteta walked in and where we're going, and, you know, him being a relatively, respectfully, a novice coach and novice players, I do like what we're doing. I do like the fact that, you know, the Emirates is buzzing again. Fans are believing in something. When I remove the fact of what we're the rebuild and I look at title contenders, then naturally I have to look at things a bit harsher. I do like the fact that goals are spread out throughout the team, but then you look at our 2 Halem boys, big them up. Eddie Nketiah got 3 in one game. He's on 5. I'm not belittling Saka, but 2 of his 6 were from penalties. Obviously, Gabriel Jesus, we've been knowing about his qualities. Defensively, I think the whole team has kind of fallen off a bit of a cliff. I don't want to be that guy about Zinchenko, but I do think we're at that stage now where he can still be utilized, he can still be used. But if you're playing a West Ham or at Anfield, you don't necessarily want to be there. And I praise Mikel Arteta for, you know, how he's assembled the squad and whatnot and all of these players. But at the same time, if I'm playing devil's advocate now, if squad depth has been an issue again, if there's an inability with the squad players to kind of make sure the team stays at a certain floor, if Odegaard and Saka aren't quite at it, then we know we're in trouble. If every attacking player, really, they all individually have to hold themselves accountable, but this month, there's not really anything to say about all the attackers. Surely by that same logic that I praise Mikel Arteta, I've got to almost ask questions, because being devil's advocate, could he be naive with how the squad's been assembled going for a Premier League title, with its inabilities to score goals, probably to defend to a certain standard? And ultimately, when players come in for key players that are out, are they necessarily good enough?
It's absolutely valid to ask questions. And I also, you know, I think it's important to. What I'd say is, you know, just on that final question, the same group scored, I think it's 55 goals between the so
We've got
it was
30 odd at the moment.
not the whole group. So it was Erdegaard, Saka, Martinelli, and Jesus. Between them, got 55 goals last season. They're at 15. So, you know, what's changed? And I think there's a couple of tactical things. So I think one of them is that Saka, the whole Saka Erdegaard white triangle has kind of fallen apart. Odegaard's been pulled back a little bit and has got a different role he's in certain games. Basically, he's just got a bit of a freer role, I think, in terms of being like, right, okay, in this game, I'm going to drop in because that's how they're pressing us. In that game, I'm going to stay on the last line. In this game, I'm going to do somewhere in between. Ben White, I find the Ben White thing slightly funny because there's some people who will go, well, Ben White's playing with an injury, so we can't go after him. Well, he came on against PSV in a dead rubber game. He's been selected a number of times over Takehiro Tomiyasu when Tomiyasu was available this season.
Oh, you want to sell Tomiyasu?
I said if 70 million came in and we could get Deluded.
70 for Tommy. I would love to see that.
That was the rumor for Bayern. Yeah. So he's been selected. And there's been a few times this season where he's come on, and so it doesn't reek to me of someone who's being managed. It reeks to me of someone who's maybe got a bit of a long-term issue that
might carry one as well. To echo your point,
yeah. And then so he's you know at some points this season I think he's been done great in the final third, but also I think he's not as athletic as maybe he was last season. Also because I think last season, because he was transitioning from a centre back to a right back, and we were all going, can he do that? And then he did it, and we all were, wow. That kind of shine is worn off a little bit.
Yeah.
And then finally, I think teams are obviously Saka's I think he's taking on his man less, I think the numbers say. But I think that's partly because for me, last season, what Saka's gravity often pulled the centre back and the full back over to him, which creates that space for Odegaard to do
people that can run in behind. Yeah.
To do the work that he did. This season, that's not happening as much. So either the wingers coming back or the centre backs actually trusting the fullback a little bit more. And because of the lack of support from Odegaard and White, that whole dynamic's not working. So that's one of the reasons.
And they both dyed their hair as well, Saka and Ben White. I think that's a big reason, man. I have to sound like a top Gooner with that one.
It's a huge reason. It's a huge reason. And it's been raining. So do you know what I mean? But you know, look, Havertz's introduction and possible struggles, which obviously we've covered. Jesus, I think, has changed in terms of his position. Martinelli, teams are managing to sort of isolate him out on the wing. Xhaka did a lot of good work, allowing him to come inside. So there's loads and loads of different things. So for me, tactically, Arteta has slightly stifled this attack, as well as the players not necessarily performing in the same way. But he's earned the right to show us how he'll fix it. So I am concerned, and there are question marks. And you're absolutely right to say, you know, is there a squad? You know, was he right to go into this season with this squad? I wish he'd added something, but equally he could very easily say, what were we sat here saying in the summer? What was the problem? Our defense. He sorted the defense out, and now we've got a problem at the other end. And that's football. So, you know, if we were sat here in the summer and he signed loads of forwards and he did absolutely nothing, he didn't sign Declan Rice, he didn't do any of that, we'd be having transition problems with our defenders and playing Rob Holding. So, you know, you can only fix one sort of leak at a time. Maybe he's naive, I don't know, but equally that same attack was functioning last season. So I think we need to give him the time and the team the time to try and fix it.
I think the two truths can live in the same realm in that, you know, you can have question marks over the players and what Arteta and what he's doing and also rate it. Obviously, as we know, being YouTube content creators and talking with Arsenal fans, no two truths can live in the same reality. It's either we're crap or we're amazing. There's no in between. I expect Arteta to be naive. And in the same way, I expect the players, you know, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but they're rookies, really. You know, Arteta is learning on the job, been learning on the job. And it's a thing where he has to fall hard. It's like he's got nobody there to tell him, you know, don't put your hand in fire. It's hot. He's putting his hand in the fire. He gets burnt, and it's down to him to learn. And going back to what I said about game management and fine margins, I think collectively as a team, there's elements of us being naive. I think you articulated it perfectly in that our right-hand side, indirectly our left-hand side. I do think, you know, obviously we're not putting balls in the back of the net. Defensively, I think our build-up play isn't quite what it used to be. I don't think regardless of the numbers, I don't feel Zinchenko is doing what he used to do. I think that's the one luxury I would give him in that defensively, you're a liability. But obviously, when you do that inverted stuff, you're amazing. I am seeing Gabriel Saliba and Declan Rice on the ball far too much. As much as I like them and their progressive passes, and I think we've all seen online, you know, the statistics for Rice, and he's improving in that regards. They're not paid to break lines and score goals and stuff. So I do think, to a degree, Mikel Arteta has stifled us. But at the same time, I don't feel you can win if you're Mikel Arteta, because people are saying they're probably still saying it now, but we've only got one way to play. We need to adapt. We need to find solutions. We need to do that. Then indirectly, probably since August, I don't agree with Gabriel not being in the team or Partey right back and all of them stuff. But when he's doing these sort of things, you can't expect him to have multiple ways of playing without him trying things. I do think the luxury to make mistakes for the players and the manager has to be there. That being said, as you said earlier, is a results-driven business. We know we're trying to fight a Liverpool and City team where fine margins are everything. So it is quite crazy. And just generally, you know, I look back again, you mentioned it with August. In August, I didn't quite think we've improved our depth, but I was quite happy. But in hindsight, I do wonder, you know, what signings we did or didn't try to do. Why actually we signed Havertz if he wasn't our first choice target, even though I think he's found his feet. And when you look at David Raya coming into the club, in hindsight, we was probably treading quite closely to FFP. And I'm not saying not to sign Raya because he looks all right, but I do wonder, could we have gone with a different angle? Because I do feel Havertz in particular settled, but you mentioned it. I think we miss Xhaka because they're two different sorts of players. Obviously, Havertz can play neat little 1-2s, but he's not like Xhaka. He's not always seeking for the ball. I say the one thing that they both have is they'll both put in a shift defensively, and definitely the Xhaka of the last 18 months, last season, kind of, they'll run in behind. So I do think there is something missing in our midfield. I think Odegaard's quality, I think Rice's quality, I think Havertz found his feet, but collectively, and I don't know what it is, maybe you do, it just feels like there's something missing. Like for me, I still think we need a 6. I still think we need an 8 that really wants to get on the ball and be kind of cultured in that regards. Goes without saying we need a striker. You know, all the rumors say Mikel Arteta wants a defender. If I'm honest, I think it needs to be a centre-back or someone of the Timber, Tomiyasu kind of ilk. Be a bit of recency bias. I'm leaning towards fullback a bit. We all know we're looking for a number 2 goalie, and a winger wouldn't go amiss. And even on the wingers, that presents me with a chance to ask you a question. Obviously, Reece Nelson has played 87 minutes in the Premier League. He's clearly, apologies, he's clearly liked by Mikel Arteta, right? He's clearly signed a new deal. But is he necessarily trusted? And are you at that point now where if Nelson isn't going to play more significant, not even just Nelson, but in terms of another body, is it worth not necessarily selling him in January, but selling him in January or selling him in the summer and then bringing in a wide man that Arteta would trust a bit more? Because you can make a case of Saka and Martinelli probably need to come out the firing line. Trossard ain't really doing the business. You know, I'm always going to push the Smith Rowe agenda. He made his money at Arsenal playing off the left. Where are you at with the players on the peripheral things? And also, let's throw Kyrgios into that as well, man.
Well, in the context of January, I was listening to David Ornstein talk, and you know, it's just that crushing feeling of it's going to be hard. It's going to be very hard. I think unless we get some,
He's got to earn his money, man.
Yeah, and you know, there's supposedly interest in Nketiah. Do we want to sell him? You know, as for all his flaws.
Hold the Eddie thoughts, man. We're gonna get onto that. I got the notes. I got the notes. Hold the Eddie thoughts, mate, my friend.
For all his for all his flaws, you know, we need that depth. For Nelson as well, you know, do we have another sort of direct winger? So you know, I think to be able to do something in January, something we all want rather than, you know, sort of stopgap. I think it's going to be very, very hard. So I think we might be stuck with the players we got. The one place I'd say is I think we're probably going to have to almost need to make a hopefully maybe, or you know, who knows, but a loan signing for the defensive side of things, because I think, you know, if you look at the depth now, we're dangerously close. We're dangerously close to Cedric Suarez. So yeah,
I rate him. I rate him because how has he survived this rebuild where Xhaka, Aubameyang, and all these players have gone? I rate Cedric at this point.
I'm going to get clipped up for this. Cedric, and don't you dare, if you're clipping this, take this out of context. Listen to the first thing I say.
I'm listening because this is scaring me.
Cedric is considered like one of the worst players Arsenal have ever had. He's not that bad. Cedric is like mid-table level at his best, right? But the problem is we're asking him to play top level football, and he just can't do it, and he gets found out in the system. But actually, Cedric, like, what's going to happen is
he's a Portuguese international. To be fair,
what I'm not annoyed about is he's put in like the Mustafi camp, and I'm like, he's not that bad. Like
Mustafi might be better than him. We went albeit with Mustafi at a point. Like, I proper don't rate Cedric. I can't lie to you, my guy. I proper don't rate him. But go on, man. I'm not saying he's good. Left back against the FA Cup, man.
Yeah, I wouldn't have it, but yeah, we're dangerously close to him. So yeah, I think look, we have to do something, whether it's, you know, Hato or whatever name you want to throw out there. But I just, the more I look at January, the more I look at those fringe players you mentioned, and I'm thinking it's not going to happen in terms of incomings and outgoings. But then in terms of their future at Arsenal, like, Kvyat's look shaky, but to some degree, I think he's being asked to do things that he's maybe not ready to do or
not built for. Yeah, I agree.
So I'd love to see him at left centre back and given a run of games. But at the moment, Gabriel is performing really well, so I wouldn't take him out of the team. So it's just a case of biding his time. He's only been here a year, you know, and he's a young guy. You know, let's just give him some time. Smith Rowe, if I was him, I would be going into Arteta with my team, and I'd be saying, look, okay, just be honest. Do you want me here? Do you see a path to the first team? If so, tell me exactly, point by point, what I need to do. Is it work 10% harder in training? Is it work on my, I don't know, upper body structure, whatever it is? Just tell me exactly what I need to do, or let me go on loan to prove to you that I can do that, or sell me. He needs to create a kind of ultimatum situation where he just goes, look, I can't be in, you know, he's basically been since the end of 21, 22.
It's stagnating, man. It's like he ain't kept the ball for the last 2 years.
Exactly. So, and what's funny is sometimes you'll say on Smith Rowe, I think he needs to move on, and people go, you know, oh, he's coming back from injury or whatever. It's like, okay, when Saka has like half a leg, when Saka's like sort of lost his knees,
Arteta's like that tough love father. He ain't
Arteta's like, I don't care. You're getting on the pitch.
Yeah.
It's like dating. If he wanted to, he would. If he wanted to, he would. I'm sorry. Like, I'm sure there's a, well, you know,
fact.
I know it's social media, but I get so many comments, but about the, you know, the good and bad or whatever. But there's one that really irked me, and one is such a patronising tone. I can't remember, it was on Twitter, obviously, and I put something out about Smith Rowe, and he said, saying, "Oh, I think it might be time for him to move on." And someone goes like, "You don't just throw a player in when they're unfit. This isn't hard." And I was like, you can't remove all the context of the years now that Smith Rowe's been around. And yes, maybe he's had, small niggles. Ben White's playing with a niggle.
Saka's playing with one.
Saka's
and probably every player in the Premier League's carrying something.
I don't buy this idea that a player needs to be worked back for, yes, they need to be worked back over a game or two or whatever. But if
Smith Rowe's been fit for a minute now.
If you love the player, he's going to play. And he's not playing. So I think this idea that, he's still working his way back from an injury and you're an idiot for not knowing that that's about periodization or whatever. It's like, come on, mate. You're just being naive. So, and then Nelson, look, I'd love to keep Nelson around. I also think, a year ago, a year ago, we were having conversations about Mudryk, weren't we? So clearly Arteta, and we know Arteta can vary his profiles. He went for a Vlahovic type and then end up with Jesus. We know he's not necessarily wedded to one style.
Facts.
But he was evidently looking for a young winger who can be explosive, who can do what Mudryk can do. So, he clearly sees that as a hole in the squad. So, and currently Nelson's the closest we have to that. So I wouldn't want to lose him without replacing him with something else.
I think the Nelson one's a weird one in that clearly the man loves Arsenal. I do think Arteta has admiration for him. I do think a bit of him signing a new deal, it kind of goes back to, in hindsight, how much money did we really have in the summer? I think they said, if we can get a winger for a certain deal, then fair enough. If not, Nelson stays as a body because ultimately we need players. But I'm at that point now. It's nothing really to do with Nelson or Smith Rowe. Maybe for next season, I want Arteta to genuinely have players that you're going. I'm not saying he doesn't trust them, but it doesn't look like you evidently trust them. Like Nelson is, for me, it's like Groundhog Day. Everything that Arteta's planned for, it goes out the window when Nelson kind of comes on. You go back to that Bournemouth game.
Sorry to interrupt you, but if Martinelli, if he can't get in the team now,
this is what I'm saying. With Martinelli's form on the floor, let's be honest, when Trossard plays, he's on the floor. And to be honest, it's all of the collective players. And I get it, sometimes, they say the definition of insanity is doing the same things again and again and expecting different results. And I do think managers get in that trap. Anyone that plays Football Manager, you have a negative run of performances. I stream it so people get onto me. And I'm playing the same players because tactically you need to do things. But at the same time, you want to change, you kind of do need to change things. And that's where I go with trusting. At the same time, though, I don't feel not even confident about January. I don't really want wholesale changes because Arteta himself spoke about we need 20-odd players when we get to March/April. Me and you and every other Arsenal fan has seen what can happen in the second half of the season. And again, for homegrown reasons and squad depth, I don't think it necessarily makes sense. But at the same time, if we're crippled with FFP, some of these players may have to go. I'm only netting Nelson and Nketiah go if there's an assurance that our forwards coming in. I don't think a winger and a forward, Jesus, can do a job. It doesn't really make sense. And when I see rumors of Nelson going on loan, I don't know how you feel, but I'm not really on that. We're kind of gone past that. You're 24 now. It's either you're going to play here or you're going to have to keep it moving. And it's a difficult one. In relation to Eddie, I like the guy. And at the same time, in August, he was probably our player of the month, really. And I don't really want to get onto Eddie Nketiah because evidently the man's limited. He's probably past his sell-by date. I do think he's improved. But despite him being on the peripheral, he can sit there and say, up until the Fulham game, I was the joint top goal scorer. So if anything, it is on Arteta. And I do think Arteta, there was one criticism, I do think he's got that Wenger thing about him to a degree in that he's very different because he's shown he can be ruthless with players. When it seemed like Pepe was going to be a bright future, Aubameyang kind of hit us out of nowhere. It's a bit different, but Xhaka, Tierney, Ramsdale, he's shown us he can be ruthless. But at the same time, I do think it's like he wants to take some players over the hill that can't get there. And I always say the players that helped us rebuild might not be the guys that help us get top four or get top four again or a Prem or a Champs. And obviously Arteta knows that because you've kind of seen it. I don't really want to get onto Kyrgios and we'll circle right back, but I do think we need to talk about Zinchenko and Martinelli. As you know, Martinelli's my guy. I do think kind of what you said earlier, Havertz and the whole left-hand side is not really there. But that being said, he doesn't look confident in the final third. He does look like he's overthinking. I do think Martinelli last season kind of turned the corner where he's getting his head up. I kind of think he's gone back to playing with his head down and running into blind alleys. I do think that it's not even that he's wide, but Martinelli's better when he's running in behind and having efforts. And I do think a bit of that for all of our attackers is kind of where we find ourselves tactically. But where are you at with Zinchenko and Martinelli in particular?
Zinchenko, I think. Well, look, the Timber injury, I think, has postponed conversations that we would have been having about Zinchenko this season. I think Timber was the replacement for
He
Zinchenko.
would have become a squad player.
Yeah, and I think then Zinchenko comes in for games where you want him, and it's also where Pep used him. If you think back to it, when Pep was in his last couple of years, Pep was using him in those games against Watford or whatever at home where they're spanking
That's
them 8-0.
Zinchenko's bread and butter, man. Not Anfield and not against Kudus and all them players.
Exactly. So Arteta knows Zinchenko's limitations, and I think what was equally both frustrating and kind of fun and kind of made me feel all right about it is we didn't learn anything new at Anfield. If Timber and Tomiyasu are fit, they play, or one of them plays. It wouldn't have been Zinchenko. So to some degree, we would go, oh, it's happened again. It's like, yeah, it has happened again, and that's frustrating. But equally, we all know that he wouldn't have played. So it's kind of we didn't learn anything new. And then I think moving forward, the question is whether he'll accept that squad role. And he'll accept not to be sort of a first choice. I imagine if I was him, I'd maybe in a couple of years you might be saying I need to go and be the number one guy. Maybe he stays at Arsenal for a couple of years. Who knows? So I think Zinchenko offers you so much in certain game states, in certain.
His underlying numbers are still all right defensively and attacking, but he's just not levels, unfortunately.
He's also improved defensively. It's
I
just
believe that as well. We'll sound crazy of saying that. And a disclaimer, has he improved to the level of us like kind of having faith in him? Evidently not, but he has improved. But that's what I mean, like where I say I'm at that point now of accepting players for what they are. And as you said, Mikel Arteta knows these players more than us. I think when you look between the lines, when he talks about Zinchenko, somebody asked him, oh, why doesn't he play in midfield? Oh, he always plays in there. And he kind of absolves him of all defensive responsibilities beyond the obvious. When he talks about Tomiyasu, he says the first job is to be able to defend. I'm not asking Zinchenko to be amazing defensively, but if Tomiyasu can improve in the final third, you can. And the man said it himself. As you said, the numbers are there. It's just not good enough. And I think we're at that stage now of acceptance. Like me, I accept that there's some games for Zinchenko, there's some games not. I love Gabriel Jesus. If there's one mediocre aspect of your play, it's obviously in the final third. And, they say, if you want to get somewhere in life, you need to learn from other people's mistakes, surely. And City had Jesus and Zinchenko as squad players. It would have been lovely and romantic if Gabriel Jesus came here, scored 20-odd goals and done his thing, and Zinchenko improved defensively. But it's about accepting them for what they are. And you mentioned about Tomiyasu and Timber. I agree with you. I think naturally Benjamin White and Zinchenko would have become squad players. Now, them being demoted isn't a bad thing. As you know, everybody knows there's injuries, there's a lot of games and things like that. And I think it would have been an interesting dynamic. I think some games you would have seen Timber play left back. Sometimes you would have seen Tomiyasu, and obviously the opposite on the other hand side. But it is what it is. I think you're bang on with Zinchenko. You've been asked this before, but I've never asked you, like, why do you think Mikel Arteta doesn't organically start Zinchenko in central midfield?
I think the idea is that he would be a left 8, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
And I always go to the people who are sort of absolutely convinced. I'm like, okay, what does our left 8, what do our 8s do at the minute? They have a lot of final third responsibility in terms of, drifting out wide, in terms of trying to break the sort of the final line, trying to deliver that final ball. They're often
defensive shift as well, really.
Defensive shift. They've got to be physically robust in terms of they're doing a lot of duels in the center of the park. Often, Ødegaard, for example, is involved in the first line of our press, but Havertz as well. And in terms of that ability in the middle of the sort of the four in the block to sort of read the lanes and understand where the ball might be traveling and shift himself over, all of which I've never seen Zinchenko do. Now, look, he's very technical, so people might go, "Well, just stick him in there," which I have no doubt he would be.
Some games will be amazing.
Exactly.
Based on what you said, it's a myth.
It's just like if you're convinced that he'd do a great job, I don't know how you got there, because I think if you look at the job description of an 8 at Arsenal, if you look at, let's say, what Martin Ødegaard does, it's worlds away from what Zinchenko does. So in terms of the physical demands on him, tactical demands on him, technical demands on him, they're very, very different. So maybe he'd go in there and be a revelation. But what I find strange is those people who are like, he's a midfielder, why hasn't he tried it? And I'm like, it's like going, I'm convinced Saka would be the best number 9 in the world. So try it. Hey, why not? You can't be convinced though. You've never seen it. So it's or certainly the demands are a different. And what I was going to say as well is just to return to your point before, when you were saying about Timber and Tomiyasu. I think I'm developing a kind of idea, but a sense with Arteta that he has his pillars, and I think his pillars feel like at the minute anyway: Raya, Saliba, Rice, Saka, those four. And then there is, and Odegaard, sorry, but probably Odegaard. So those five. Everything else around it probably is up for debate. But those five kind of mean all the basics of his football can be done. And then he sort of fills in around it. He tinkers, essentially. And I think we'll begin to see that. I think we'll begin to see, and that's probably kind of what you want, because then you have enough sort of, it's like that constant thing with Emery. Like he went too far in terms of how he was adapting to different teams. But you also don't want to be rigid and only play one way. It's like, how do you find that?
But it's like the age-old thing in life, isn't it? Finding balance in everything you do.
And having five players who are, probably maybe plus Gabriel, maybe at the moment. So maybe 5+1. But I still think I still do wonder whether he's looking, and if we get Delict, who knows? Anyway, but that you have that sort of set five, that core that play every single important match and most games, and then you have a sort of a changing around. So you might say, okay, well in this game they're pressing in a 3 structure, so we're going to move Zinchenko inside to move that winger inside. In the next game we've got a tricky right winger, so let's put Timber out there. In the next game, their right back's particularly strong, so we need to put Saka over on the left hand side. Whatever it is, it gives you enough stability to go right here we go. Here's our game plan. We play the same way, and then little changes. And I think if you look at City, kind of what they've done, they have their, not to always use them as the benchmark, but they have Edison, Diaz,
historically, Kevin De Bruyne, obviously Gundogan once upon a time and whatnot. Exactly. And then it's just other players that, if their form's out of this world, you've seen them come into the team. Like Bernardo's done that, Grealish has done that, Doku's done that. And I think you've indirectly touched on it. And I think this is what fans need to understand. It's about a squad. As you said, we need balance. You don't want to go too far, like big up Emery and what he's doing at Aston Villa, but the mad rotations he was doing at Arsenal. You don't want to be a bit like Arsene Wenger, with the greatest of respect, towards the end where he was very rigid. You need to find that balance. And kind of what you said, unless you're, and again, form dictates anything, but unless you're Saka, to a degree, Odegaard, Declan Rice now, Saliba, it's kind of up for debate game by game, because as much as I feel, the first choice fullbacks at this moment in time should be Timber and Tomiyasu, there'll be games maybe for Benjamin White or maybe for Zinchenko. And I know he's kind of left, and, he was going to be a squad player. The system's kind of left him, but there was a reality where had Tierney wanted to stay, which I agree with him going, because you're not playing, you could have come on to close out games. And I think fans need to be comfortable with depth. Again, since August, we've been dealing with this. And obviously, Mikel Arteta in the Europa League was naming a strong team, but we've kind of had to go all the way in, because we can't really rest players in the champs. We can't rest them in the Prem. I think Liverpool, to kind of counteract what we're both saying, I think Liverpool's the only anomaly in that they had a small squad when they've won stuff, and they've just done a madness. But as you saw with last season, injuries catch up with everyone, and even Klopp is understanding why you need depth and things like that. So I think you're bang on the money, man.
I liken it to, like, I don't know, like Call of Duty, we get like you have the same gun, but you just change the attachments. Depending on what you're doing. It's like, you just right, go, okay, well in this game I need a silencer for that thing, and in that game but it's the same gun, just different things. And I think the fullbacks would have changed. I think the left 8 would have changed for us specifically. The left 8 would have changed. I think and just to go back to Jesus and Zinchenko were those attachments, for Pep, and they became stalwarts for us because they're brilliant. But that's what we needed to do
at the time. We needed that pressing forward. We needed that inverted fullback. But a year's a long time. We've kind of evolved, and kind of going back to what you said, Zinchenko has kind of gone from a necessity to somewhat an accessory, if that makes sense. In that, the better we get in the final third, if we can find that lovely wordplay in it, sexy wordplay, if we get that first 8 and 6, then if Zinchenko can play and be an added layer, like a bit of the icing on top of the cake, great. But the better we get in the middle and final third, the less reliant you kind of are. It's like Kieran Tierney. Not that I agree with letting Tierney go in terms of being depth, but the better we got defensively as a team, we kind of less needed an organic kind of old-fashioned left back, and we needed someone with a bit more balls to their arrow, really and truly. So you're bang on the money, man. Bang on it.
Yeah, I think. Again, Tierney, I think, is another great accessory, and then you decide what accessories you need. But I think that's That's a nice way of putting it. It's necessities and accessories, and I think that's the name of my next
Lovely stuff, man.
YouTube video, which I'm stealing off you. Thank you.
Have it, man. Have it. Oh, okay. So moving on, yeah. Obviously, to kind of get towards the last part, yeah. First thing I want to ask you, what should be the priority in this market? We know there's rumors about strikers and midfielders and defenders, and even today the priority is left back allegedly. Like, what's the one? January's done. The one position.
If we don't sign a defender, I will be very concerned.
You're not alone.
But I've said over the last couple of months, like people, you get a comment, should we sign Osimhen now or wait till the summer? Or, all those sorts of things. And you go, those are lovely conversations to be having. We currently don't have a roof. So we might want to get a swimming pool, but we should probably prioritize the roof a little bit.
Amen. We need some central heating in our house, mate.
Let's get I haven't got a bed. I'm sleeping on the floor at the minute. So let me do that first. Literally. And then we'll think about the swimming pool.
Then we can talk about surround sound and what.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I can't see past the need for a defender. If Kivior is a project, I think he's a fantastic, has all the fundamentals, but clearly, honestly, for me, and I never want to just put it down to confidence because it's never just this. I'm still learning the player. I still don't have a complete sense of what he is, but I love all the fundamentals, and I just wish he'd play with a bit more personality. Really,
I agree. I agree, man. It's like there's something wrong with it. It's like there's something wrong. Maybe it's because Gabriel's playing ahead of you. You're not playing out of position, but it does look like that. And I think you're right. And again, I can't really comment on what I don't know, but it does appear, if I'm honest, in the games I've seen from Kirill, it's like opponents can smell that on him, and then they get at him. If I'm honest with you,
I think so. And there was that. You get little things. There was that comment from Rob Holding about how he didn't want a picture with the trophy. Just all little things. And you just
too humble, isn't it?
Yeah, and you just sort of go, back yourself. So I'm looking at Kivior
for a reason.
Yeah, and so he's kind of not quite there. Then we have Gabriel Saliba and White, and then Zinchenko's injured supposedly. Tomiyasu's constantly injured.
And now he's gone off to the Asia Cup.
And he's gone to the Asia Cup. Timber's injured. We get out of Partey to covering at right back. We are dangerously close to Cedric Suarez, and
I rate Cedric. He's playing the long game.
As you know, as I said earlier, he's better than all our defenders. So yeah, no, but he's playing the long game. he's going to be Gunnosaurus before long.
Literally, get 100 bags a week. That's great stuff, man. I rate it, Cedric. Fullback union, man.
Ozil paying his wages.
Literally.
Yeah. Look, I can't see past it. If once we've done that, we can have different conversations, but that has to be the priority. The only thing I'd say, I hope it happens sooner, but I think sometimes in windows, what happens is we get a sense of order being the order of business indicating priority, and it never does. It never does. You could clearly wanted Thomas Partey in that window of 2020. We needed a midfielder so badly, and we did it on the final day because that's when the deal worked for us. So
Markets are typically reactive, especially January.
Yeah. So I think we've got to wait till the 31st. As you said earlier, if we can get if we can, with guarantees of, we're going to move for that player who has a, say we're going to move for Nico Williams, who's got a £51 million release clause. We know it's a clear run at him. We're just waiting. We go, right, we've had an offer for Nelson, had an offer for Nketiah, get them out the door, bring him in. Is that the best move? I don't know. But a situation, I'm not saying to do that, and specifically with Nico Williams, I don't know. But my point is more, if there's something lined up that we can go, right, that is
real
the thing,
feasibility, yeah.
Then I'd be up for it. But look, we've got to wait for the summer. And any discussion about Ivan Toney, I just think is fanciful. Brentford are going to want £100 million. We're having to do cup and string deals with Brentford for David Raya as it is.
They're fighting relegation as well, and missing players due to injury and AFCON.
Yeah, Wiss is gone and Burma's gone. So they're going to want 100 million. We already owe them for, we've got an IOU piece of paper we just gave them
27 million, yeah.
No chance. There's no, even if you think the player is perfect, which I don't, I would cap my interest at 20.
I was going to ask you about Ivan Toney, but you beat me to it, man. I know you're passionate on him, and he's only got at a point 3 non-penalty goals over Jesus. I don't think Tony's the answer for what he's worth. I like him. If we signed him, I don't think it's the end of the world. I can't sit here and say I would necessarily want to wait until the summer to sign a striker, because of course that can make or break the difference. And there's no guarantee we're going to sign Osimhen or whatever, but I'm prepared to concede a striker if we get that defensive body, as you're saying. The same way you're saying about defensively, and I agree with that. I personally think we're playing a very dangerous game in midfield. And I do think Arsenal fans and Arsenal, we get pulled into this trap of, if this guy's fit, when this guy's fit. And we've ultimately seen this before. And it does feel like the last 3 or so seasons, that has kind of been the case. I think we do, obviously, we need to look at another goalie because Ramsdale's probably not going to be here this time next year. I would like another winger, but I think, as you said, that would probably be the most fanciful thing. I mean, I wouldn't say there's a reality because of FFP, but provided you could get around that, there might be a feasibility of bringing in an Ivan Toney, or I don't agree with it, but 50 odd million for Vlahovic, even though I don't agree with that being the fee. But I think we do need a defender. If anything, fix the spine in it. Defense wins titles. I don't know it because I don't think these players are clinical, but it just seems like a lot of our players in the final third were overthinking. And I do think with the couple of real clear-cut half chances we're creating, of course, a more clinical man bags that turn some defeats into draws, some draws into victory, and then we're laughing with it. So I agree with you. Would you let Ramsdale go this Jan?
Well, if a massive offer came in, it could be an opportunity because you then go for right, okay, and if we could get, let's say, a massive offer comes in, we could get another, let's say, even experienced keeper in, or someone who we think can could do a job for us. If that
still
was right,
push Raya as well without it being clear who's 1 and 2.
Exactly, and there are those keepers out there. The talent is out there.
Just got to scout them.
Yeah, it's just got to find them, and we'll all sit here after the signing and go, yeah. Jason Ostrobek, yeah, absolutely. Always known about him.
I'm a genius. Been following him since his days when he was playing in Saudi Arabia and whatnot.
Rubbish. But the talent is out there. But if that, say for example, Newcastle, and I'm not saying this is going to happen. Newcastle come in for a £65 million bid for Ramsdale. And by the way, I remember I was on the Ripple Effect, James Walcott, and big up James, and people were laughing at 60-70 million for Ramsdale. Right. Alisson came from Roma for 66 or 68 million or something in 2017. If you don't think probably a top 3 goalkeeping prospect in the world, even if he's not absolutely perfect.
I mean, wasn't it the other day he was rated as one of the most valuable keepers or something like that?
He was in the Ballon d'Or listings. He's just signed it. He's in the PFA Team of the Year. He's just signed a new contract. He's still 24, 25. If you don't think to a Chelsea or a Newcastle or a Manchester United or whatever, we couldn't get 65 million. I really think you're undervaluing it. I'd actually go higher. So I
think 35 to 50 personally, but based on what you said, it comes down to hustling. Really, I do think we've got into that world of football where it's not really necessarily what a player's worth. It's about leverage and stuff. And as you said there, Premier League clubs, no Premier League clubs got money really. For Ramsdale, I don't know if it makes sense in theory to go Newcastle or Chelsea, because you go Chelsea, you might very well be the number one day, and you might be the number one, but you've got Sanchez, and there's no guarantee Real Madrid are going to hold Kepa. Pope, obviously, I do think Newcastle, if they could get Ramsdale on loan, they'll do that tomorrow. But you're going to be next to someone you're competing for England. I remember a few weeks ago, he was linked with Wolves. I personally think if I was him and I'm not going abroad, I'd take the step to Wolves, play there for a few years, and you'll make the move. Not to belittle Aston Villa, but I think Emi Martinez did the right thing. You've gone to Villa, and with the greatest of respect to Aston Villa, I don't know why he's not playing for a Champions League club or something like that, or a better kind of team.
At his age, he just needs, people say this about every player. At his age, he just needs to be playing. Everyone needs to play. But what I think he has time on his side. So I think he can take a step back. It's like, I think sometimes with young players, they're so desperate to stay at top clubs thinking, I'll never get back here. It's like, well, just go to the right lower,
do what you did to get into this point anyways.
Exactly. And once you've got a proof of concept, you say, look, I've got these, you can start to leverage contracts, you can start to leverage clubs and stuff. And look, clubs get to positions where there's constant churn, there's constant opportunities. As long as you take it, you'll be fine. So look, if we could get a massive deal for Ramsdale over the line, possibly, and have a replacement, and maybe use that money, then great. I still look at the FFP thing, and we're either 27 million pounds or more closer to FFP. So basically we can't pay 27 million pounds now, pretty much, for David
Raya.
Need
some creative accounting.
We're that close, or closer.
Yeah.
So if we could get, who knows? We could say we won't pay you now, we'll pay you in the summer. But what club's going to do that? So I just feel January is not a write-off, but it's going to be quiet.
I know you've probably seen them rumors, and again, disclaimer: rumors are not facts. But have you seen them rumors about? I'm sure some of the in the knows were saying, Ramsdale's not really happy that the coaching staff are speaking Spanish and all of that jazz.
I haven't seen that. To be honest, though,
Crazy.
I'm sure he is. No, I won't say that. I'll tell you after. The Ramsdale stuff, I completely understand his frustration, and I think it has maybe been slightly underrated that Iñaki Caña, David Raya, Mikel Arteta, Carlos Cuesta, Miguel Molina, all these guys are Spanish, and and it's not in any way a sense of oh god, and that's bad. It's just that
Amen.
I remember I used to work in this hotel, and there was this old woman called Carol who, bless her heart, but there was two Spanish waiters called Ivan and Paco, great guys, and they used to speak Spanish to each other. Obviously, if you and I were in Spain and working together, we'd speak English to each other. Why wouldn't we?
We'd be a bit alienated to it.
She used to go, English, please. And oh God. And it's that thing of she's speaking because I think she was worried that they were talking about her, which they were. But it's funny because obviously, if you're in a foreign country, of course you go to you go closer to people who understand your culture.
Naturally, in the squad, the South American boys are probably cooler with each other. The English lads, of course, there's all mixing and whatnot, but that's just a human defensive element.
Exactly, really. It's completely natural. So. That's not wrong, but I can understand, and it's natural, but I can understand Ramsdale feeling left out, in the same way that, you would. You just, in the same way that, when I was on shift and it was just me and there was 3 Spanish people on, I felt a bit left out. It's just, it happens. It's just culture.
Ramsdale's got to get Duolingo or whatever it's called.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a good Spanish teacher. You could try her.
Hook him up, man.
Yeah, but anyway, look, point being that I wouldn't be surprised, but equally it's the way the world works, and I don't think it's a case. I don't think it's a case of that's unfair or whatever. It's just the way it is, and I think with Ramsdale,
it's just the way it is. Word to Tupac, man.
Never be this way. But if I was him though, I would be again similar to Smith Rowe. I'd be saying, look, I want to play somewhere. I want to play. Please let me play because I'm going to the Euros. Look, Pickford's in good form at Everton. Johnston, has done really well at Palace, although Palace aren't doing particularly well. Obviously, Pope's out, so that might help him, but he's going to come back. So I think he might start to look around and go, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. All the English lads got to go into Mikel Arteta's office and say, you know what? Yeah, I know you wanted Raya as your first choice, but I was here when you was part of the trenches. Smith Rowe should do the same. And just get Saka. Really, if Saka for no reason might as well go in there because he's got a bit of authority as well.
We'll get Carol in. English, please. English, please.
Ramsdale's even got to sit there and say, you know what? I look after Win the dog and whatnot. David Raya ain't doing that really.
I think there was drilling at Me gustaría un place in the team. De Keepo.
He's got to do something like that. But I want to talk to you about some other players as well, briefly. We've been linked with Onana of Everton. What are you saying to that?
Big boy.
You want it?
He's all right.
Nah, you're not convinced, man. He's doing the political stuff, people.
No, what happens is a player has a good run, and then we're all like, that's it. It's like, who's that Boniface?
Boniface. Another one whose name's on the list as well. You might as well offer your thoughts on that as well, mate.
I'll tell you who you've got. Onana, Boniface, Guirassy, have you got on there?
Nah, I ain't got Guirassy, but I do have 2 strikers. 3 actually.
Oh, Šeško?
Nah.
Okay.
It does begin with an S though, one of them. I'll give you that.
Okay. What happens is we hear a name and then we go, that's it. Right? We go, that's
how we probably feel about Osimhen as well to a degree.
Yeah, but he is it.
Even though he's quality.
We hear a name, we go, Arsenal linked to this player. Then we don't sign the player, and then everyone gets annoyed at the club. And I go, at no point did Arsenal say they were interested. By the way, I said this on something recently. Clubs should have interest in all of the good players in the world.
Which is what I said. Everyone should be interested in everyone. Buy-in and bids and talking are completely different things.
I want to Edu, I want his assistant, I want the data team, I want the scouting team to be constant talks with agents saying what's going on there, what's that situation going on here, exactly. How's he doing, does he want to move to whatever, with not necessarily an interest in buying, but to know what's going on.
Just keep yourself in the loop.
And what happens with, like, you know, and Onana's in good form. So I hope Arsenal are tracking him. And I hope they are. That is a world apart from Mikel Arteta. He's in love with him. So I just, you know, with all these things, I just want to exercise a level of caution. And we need sample. You know, Onana's been very good in this first half of the season. And he was pretty good at the end of last season. But again, you know, he still
And we
needs
wanted him in his days in France. So that interest kind of piggybacking off what you said is probably just following us. A bit like with Douglas Luiz, a bit like with Zubamendi. Half of these big ticket kind of players, or players that are going to cost a lot of money. But like you said, FFP, mate. Like, unless there's a mad cash injection or there's some creative accounting, it's a myth. So what are you saying for Curtis Jones and Solanke then? Because they've been linked with
I
us.
should have known it's Solanke.
Yeah, I thought you would get it, to be fair.
Sorry. Man in good form, Arsenal linked. Yeah, and then Curtis Jones is an Arsenal fan. I really like Curtis Jones, by the way.
Is he actually Arsenal fan?
He is. Curtis Jones, supposedly, when he was a kid, he was an Arsenal fan.
You're the best in the world. Let's get it done. That's simple. That's all I needed to hear.
I like Curtis Jones, actually.
I like him a lot.
I really
can see why Arteta would want him.
Yeah, 100%. He's got the Arteta sort of bite about him.
Can play everywhere and whatnot.
Yeah, I like the players. I'm not, you know, again, it's the same situation. I imagine they're looking in every single position and saying, have we got the best in class that we possibly can? How do we do it? And then the problem, what happens is, it'll be like, right, through an intermediary, we'll say, what's the situation with Curtis Jones? We're not necessarily interested, just what's the situation? That intermediary has got a husband or wife or whatever who speaks to the Sun newspaper, Arsenal interested in Curtis Jones.
And they could be playing us as well. Like, for all we know, Curtis Jones could be in talks for a new contract at Liverpool. We've seen it. We saw it with Tommy Asu the other few weeks ago. He's going to all these Italian clubs, and now he's close to signing a deal. It's that age-old trick in the game, man.
Have you seen that Thomas Muller thing with Man United? It's like, I've never seen
for that with him.
A bigger agent move than, well, he's going to move to Man United. He's not.
Yeah. Unless there's a Man United in Saudi Arabia, I don't know. And even that, I don't know. Like that's absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy.
It's just not.
What you saying for Vlahovic?
He's not. I worry about his mobility. I've always worried about his mobility. Whenever I watch him run, he takes
weird, isn't it? Yeah.
So many strides. It's like he's like he's got a parachute on. It's like Lacazette.
They say he's lightning quick. But Lacazette, to be fair.
Back end of 2022, when he was just like, you felt like he was taking about 15 strides for everyone else's one. I don't look again. He's called Vlahovic and he's Serbian and he's, you know, big boy and he scored goals in it for Fiorentina. He's done all right at Juventus. He's not changed the world. I'm holding that for Osimhen. The thing is like, right. So I think about this, like, clubs will clearly have plans for what they want to do every January, and every window, but every part of that will be obviously being open to stuff. But they might be saying, okay, we think we want to get this position sorted within the next 2 years, right? So they might be saying, look, we need to, you know, there's a priority here. We haven't got a player here, so we're going to try and do that this window. But at some point, we want to get this position sorted. We're happy with who we have, but we think we can improve it. There's other priorities, but whatever. And then you look at the market and you go, well, this January, that contract situation is interesting. So let's have a look at that. But we know that next summer, that player becomes available, or that release.
How long we waited for us?
Exactly. That release clause becomes interesting. And I think sometimes you have got to play the long game for certain players who, when they come on the market, they are the best that market. It's like the Haaland thing or the Bellingham thing. So Haaland previous summer, Bellingham this summer just gone. Those were the best players available on the market. So in 2019, had we been in a good position, we should have been thinking, how do we meet Haaland when he's coming out? Because that's the next best striker in world football. How do we meet Jude Bellingham when he's looking for a move from Borussia Dortmund?
Kylian Mbappe, even though that's wishful thinking.
Exactly. So to get those deals done, Man City do it so well. They do it so. In fact, they even moved on Aguero a year early. So they're so good at knowing, right, okay, that player's coming out of here.
Incredible foresight.
Exactly. So knowing who you want probably 2-3 years in advance and still monitoring them is important. I think players like Solanke, nice player, but it's not a deal that Arsenal do. It's not that sort of, I don't think we operate like that.
It doesn't move the needle, respectfully, and they're going to ask for, it's not value for money, if I'm honest.
No, and it'll be, you know, 80, 100 million. The Bournemouth owner was on TalkSport and said he isn't going to sell, which could be a negotiating position, but it sounded pretty secure. And they don't need to sell. And so you know, Solanke is in a great run of form, but if we wanted Solanke, we would have been looking at it for the last 2 years.
Yeah, he would have been someone already. Like, unless you're replacing Eddie Nketiah, I'm not for it. Would you take Sancho on loan?
Jadon Sancho.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a romantic. If anyone can fix him, if anyone can fix him,
It'll be Don Mikel.
the Fogging standards.
You did a great impression of that, man. This guy. So what? Are you having him? Because I disagree, if I'm honest. Like, and I agree with you in the romantic in me. He's young, he's English, he'll tie in well. Arteta will show him a bit of love, and Ten Hag showed him a cold shoulder. But when I remove the Arsene Wenger in me and think, oh, how would Jose think? He's on like 300k. It's a results-driven business. I do think Sancho is a great player, but are you evidently better than what we have at the moment? The answer is no. A bit like Ivan Toney, different context, but you ain't been playing. In fact, Tony's actually allowed to train at the training ground. I don't know what Jadon Sancho's doing. He's probably in the local park, so it's a bit of an issue. My last question for you, actually, before we get into Arsenal-Liverpool briefly, would you recall Kieran Tierney, and have you seen the fact that Arsenal apparently have complained to the PGMOL regarding Saka?
I have. That happens all the time, so it's interesting to me that Arsenal are singled out as the ones who did it.
Yeah.
And I think they're right to. So many times this season, it takes. What annoys me about one of the many things that annoys me about refereeing is that if a team is, say, having 70% possession, and the other team is just fouling to try and slow the game down. Sorry. That's just seen as like sportsman, that part of the game now. And I don't understand. It's a foul is a foul is a foul. It doesn't matter whether they've got 30% possession. That's on them. You've got to start. It's clear, so clear. It's so many games this season what the tactic is from the other team.
Just kick lumps out the guy. Look at Crystal Palace. What was it, MacArthur? From nothing got done in that game, I gave up with Saka, and it's quite scary, really and truly, how he's kicked from pillar to post. And I do think a bit of it is the unconscious bias of Arsenal are cheats, we're a soft touch, we like to dive. Referees are human. Like, if you think Salah is a diver, you're not going to give a pen. If I think Saka is an honest lad, I'm going to give the pen. So it is quite annoying, man. If I'm honest, I think you're bang on the money with that. And it's the inconsistencies, really, because it's like, if we make fouls, you know the story. You watch the games.
It's just frustrating because you know what teams are doing, and the game is managed as like, well, they're not in the ascendancy, so that's part of the tactics. No, it's a foul.
It's just a foul, mate. Like, come on.
So
it's ridiculous. You recalling Tierney? If there's possibility.
If we're sat here on January the 31st and that's our only option, I probably would do it, because I think there's a number of pros and cons. Pros, he is a good player. He gives us a different option. He would allow us to attack the final third in a different way. I think he'd do well for Havertz. Lots of different things. He's not the right player for us long term, but if someone's recovering from an injury, or we're still waiting for Timber or Tomiyasu or whatever, maybe we get another injury. Who knows? It's not the ideal situation. He himself is still having his injury issues, and I just think it's time for Tierney to move on. But if we're sat here, and if we are allowed to recall him, which is another issue, I don't know whether we are allowed to recall him.
Probably have to give them some money, give them their money back, and then, as you said earlier, FFP, we're playing a tight game.
Yeah. So look, if we're sat here on January 31st, we haven't got a left back. We might not have any choice. It's not my top choice, but I think there's some people who are just dead against the idea, and I'm like, it's not the worst idea in the world.
No, it wouldn't send the right positive signals to me. It would be quite reactive. By the end of the day, to have the luxury to at least bring Tierney off the bench, I'm all for that. Honestly, if I'm Kieran Tierney, I don't do it, because I'm not going to play. Kyrgios ahead of me in the pecking order. A fit Timber is. Zinchenko will play week in, week out. I don't really want to go back to being that kind of bench guy. I'm playing week in, week out at Sociedad. They're still in the Champions League. I made a commitment to be here. And I don't think Tierney is a player that forced his way out and things. I just think Arteta said, this is your plan. Tierney tried his best to play that inverted role. And he said, you know what, Gaffer, I can leave with my head held high. I'm just keeping it moving, really. So I agree with you. If we get to the end of the market and it's not looking like anything's going to be done, for me, it's not positive from the club, but you've got to do what you've got to do. Finally, though, man, Arsenal-Liverpool FA Cup settings, very different game to the one in the Premier League. No Tomiyasu, obviously no Partey. They're probably going to make some changes. I'm pretty sure they ain't got Salah. What are you expecting from the game? What are you, beyond the obvious, what are you hopeful of?
Has Tomiyasu gone? He's already gone?
Yeah, he's gone, man.
Interesting. Okay.
which is jarring. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I haven't really thought about it. We sat on the first Thursday, so these are really my first thoughts. I, I'm not. An FA Cup doesn't do anything for us. It doesn't move the needle, And there are people who say a trophy's a trophy and whatever. But for
I want to
me,
win the FA Cup. I can't lie to you.
yeah, no, fair. And
Our trophy.
there's fans that like that. I'm not particularly that way oriented. I'd rather focus on the league, but. Not to say you wouldn't, but there's some people who there's more value in it than for others. It doesn't particularly bother me. I hope we put in a good performance, and obviously I hope we win. But for me personally, this isn't like a must win. If we lose with a decent performance, the one thing I would say is I'd like to see is control a match against Liverpool and really kind of show them something, and show them, especially our ground, show them that we can really control the football against them. That would be nice. I think the manner of the game is more important to me than the result. If we lose, I'm not going to be that bothered about being out of the cup. Personally, I know some people might disagree.
I can't lie. I'm going to be this short because I've got a romance around the FA Cup. I don't have many criticisms from Mikel Arteta, but I think since we won it, and I'm not belittling it, but we won it where there's no fans allowed. I think we've quite frankly been embarrassing ourselves. I agree with you. Many people that are sat here like myself and be like, yeah, I want to win the FA Cup. We win the FA Cup and don't win the Prem, and I don't think we're winning the champs. But the champs are going to say, oh well, it's not a major honour, so you can't really help anyone. But I want to win the FA Cup, man. I just want a trophy, really. I just want Declan Rice to win as many trophies as he can, so West Ham fans can shut the hell up as well, because they won't shut up about it. And it'd be nice to beat West Ham in the next game we play them. But yeah, I'm expecting a different game. I don't quite think it'll be the game at the like at Anfield. I do think we'll start on the front foot. I am expecting a more positive game, really. And I do think sometimes, obviously, football is football. It doesn't really matter what competition, but the Premier League hasn't been a happy stomping ground this month. Sometimes I feel when you can remove yourself from that, we can see what's going on. I don't expect Mikel Arteta to make mass changes, but you just never know. Arteta keeps us guessing. So I'm going to go with a 2-1 prediction. What you got?
I got these right I think last two times. 2-1 Liverpool.
We rebuked that.
Sorry.
You never know. You know what? You never know. Do you know what? 2-1 Arsenal, and I'm going to stick my neck out. And he is a fullback, and I don't really believe this. I'm more talking it into existence. Zinchenko is going to have a solid game. Zinchenko, I'll never back you again. If you
in midfield, yeah.
Boy, wherever at this point, Zinchenko, just show me something. As long as Cedric be on the bench, you know what? I might even say Cedric will score the winner, man. But I won't quite go that far, man. But it's been great chatting to you again, man. Happy New Year and whatnot. You mentioned at the start that you've got content coming out. Let people know when that is and where they can find you.
Yes, video. I don't know when this will be out, but video coming out today on the Thursday, the 4th of January. And yeah, more stuff coming out. I think got something coming out on Sunday. And then, the content machine rolls on, baby.
Transfer news and whatnot, man. This January's a bit of a weird one.
Steal all of Babs' views.
Pick up Babs, man. I did a recording with him yesterday, which I still need to make a thumbnail, man. But Alex, it's always quality speaking with you. Again, people, we've covered a crap load of stuff here. Probably a lot of the talking points we've forgotten about. But anything that you lot pick up on, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Subscribe to both channels. All you need to do is click the hyperlink and it will take you to Alex's platform. And yeah, man, Alex, enjoy what's left of your day, man. One love for doing this, man. Peace out, people. Come on.
Because you always use that active red flag defending. I think it's like